just morphologically slightly different. So Archaeobotanicals again says that really 2-row barley seems to be kind of dry upland agricultural byproduct of this domesticated grain, whereas the 6-grain is lowland. Also, it seems like now, based on Sumerian, we're going to talk a little about that, is that this is the word for barley, and Utatu would then Akkadian for barley. Let's see here. I get this hot. I don't want to overboil this. So likely what's going on here is that we'll talk about some of this. Basically, what's happening within this ceramic pot here, it looks like wood, but it's actually clay. At a certain temperature now, these grains, the starches, are converting to sugars. And that really happens about 150-degree Fahrenheit temperature. Now, of course, there wasn't thermometers in antiquity, so likely it would have been kind of just by finger, you know. That's how you test milk, right? For babies, so it's sort of one of those tests where you kind of knew the range you were looking for. So I need to actually bring this up a little bit more and stabilize it. So that's when the sugars are converting, and that's when you want the maximum sugar output of your grain, so that when you add the yeast, then you're going to get higher alcohol content. Fermentation starts, and then the byproduct being carbonation and alcohol. So here we are again, some of the sites that we see in ancient Sumer. And the Sumerians here are in this period. I won't go into detail too much about that, but you have writing ultimately here in the late Roman period. This is where we look to archaeologically in this region for evidence of beer, because it is written down. You'd be surprised, though, as much as we'll see of pictorial and written evidence of beer, there's very few archaeological sites that actually yield this, unlike Egypt, you have a lot more of them. But here's basically, you know, it goes from pictographic to cuneiform. Over time, you can see some of this slide here up to about 1,000 feet, very much more better writing style. It's the cuneiform. But it starts, you can see set barley goes through the times. But we have quite a bit of evidence for beer, or at least Sikaru being written down. Certainly grain. A lot of these come in the form of economic transactions for bulk grains that were moving to and from different city-states. There's also evidence of, you know, different beer jars. In fact, here's one here. It's actually Babylonian. You can see this. This is the list here, the pictograph. And typically, when the lines are like that, that's when you know it was actually full of beer. It's like, so it was a full container in this case. There's also law codes written, which you'll see. There's even recipes for beer. So, and that's one of the ones we're going to look at in a second. So, quite a bit of information regarding beer in Mesopotamia. Here is very interesting. This is the one really that we look to for what the process was for brewing, for making a Henquet. So in the title Henquet, there are, Sikaru, Henquet, and Zythos. So Sikaru being the Sumerian for beer, Henquet, as we'll see, will be Egyptian, and Zythos will be Greek. So if you want to read this is 1800 thereabouts BC, a site that was found in Nippur, Iraq. But Ninkasi, so when you get to this point in civilization in this region, you have, when you get to the point where you're creating a deity for beer, you know that it's quite important, and it's been around well enough for that to be established. In this case, you can see kind of the process. So you're the one who handles the dough with a big bread shovel, mixing it in a pit up here, again, the bread, with dates and honey. You're the one who bakes the bop here in a big oven, puts it in order, the piles of cold grain. So again, this is sort of the process we do. You're the one who pours the water over the malt and sets it on the ground. You're the one who soaks the malt in a jar. So again, that's kind of ultimately that sugar conversion action. You're the one who then spreads the cooked mash on large reed mats. Now that is actually thinking that would have been a use of straining the grain through the, think about the reeds, the mats, and roll it up and then kind of drain all that grain out. And they poured water with that. Sparging is what we call that. And that's what we're going to do through the sieve here in this case. Yeah, the other one who holds with both hands the great sweet wort. Wort is what's going on that is, it's like the mash that you need before adding water to it. So that's the sweetness that you can turn this to alcohol. It makes a pleasant sound, but basically that's like we think of the fermentation process. And once that happens, then it's fermenting, that bubbles typically. So you would have an air hole. In this case, I have one here. It's covered at the moment with wax, beeswax. And so it also shows that it pours out the collector vat, one on top of the other, so it filters through to a fermentation jar where it sits for a couple of days, depending on the fermentation process or cycle. Typically a week minimum anyway. And then you're the one who pours out the filter to your collector vat. It's like the onrush of the tigers in phrase. So again, that's kind of a connotation of a lot of water being used. This was one of the earliest actually experimental recipes based on this. And again, the University of Pennsylvania were involved in this one. So Anchor Steam in San Francisco actually recreated this recipe. Solomon Katz, he was one of the guys to help interpret it. And so they came up with this beer, and I don't know if they're still producing it. I don't think they are, but it was the 80s anyway. So this is kind of the beginning of the microbrewing revolution in the States, and already they were experimenting with ancient recipes. So, but again, here's the kind of what apparently was fruity, kind of champagne-like beer. So some of the beers that we brewed, the Egyptian one, and this one's going to be kind of similar to that. It's almost like cider. It's interesting the texture of the beer itself. A little bit sweet because of the honey. So here's law codes, the law code of Hammurabi. You've probably heard about this one. But it does talk about beer. Interesting enough, in the beer cellars, and of course, price gouging, and if you do that, you'll be thrown into the water. Another translation actually shows about rebels eating in beer halls. This was kind of has been happening throughout antiquity, even revolutions in the United States happened likely out on the East Coast in ale houses in Boston. So again, here, if a beer cellar is housing rebels, and she does not tell them she'll be slain. So obviously, just trying to maintain law and order in these places. Imagery, quite a bit of this happens. You see this in cylindrical seals throughout, found all over the region of Mesopotamia and the ancient Near East, into Iran. A lot of these are from Iraq, modern Iraq. You can see what basically you see typically is a couple of people sitting around feasting scenes, is what they're interpreted as, drinking out of pots with straws. Here's another one, very early one there. So this is well known. This is a drinking scene. You have other things happening, typically feasting as well. But this is actually at the Oriental Institute of Chicago. Has this straw. Typically these are either reeds or metal. So these are basically to filter the chaff that would have been in something like this. As you would filter out this beer into something like this, a strainer, which we'll see at certain sites have been found, and they're kind of enigmatic, as some Gosling probably attest to. Like, obviously they were used for straining something, whether it was grain, it's very likely it's probably over purpose than some say cheese or some other kind of product. So, needless to say, you're going to get quite a bit of chaff that's in there, and so by drinking out of the straw, you're minimizing that intake into that. Here's an interesting correlation, actually, in parts of North Africa. These folks here are drinking communally out of a gourd, in this case, which is kefir type of beer brewed there. So, this was again a ceremonial kind of thing, a ritual event, just getting together with the lads and having a chat and drinking. Active fermentation, mind you, but a good substitute for nutrients, and then of course the byproduct. You can stumble home to your wife and tell them all